Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome back to a brand new video, where today we're going to be looking at all 20 Premier League clubs and I'm going to be giving a transfer suggestion per club. Not just that, a sensible transfer suggestion. Of course, we've got 20 clubs to talk about and I'm going to mention a player that I genuinely think would add value to each club. Not just the random big money signing, but someone who would genuinely improve the team. And as I said, I'm not just going to base it off of transfer rumors.
God damn it! Gosh darn it! Shit! Shoot!
Now, of course, before we jump into each of the 20 teams, I would like to apologize as I know this isn't my normal football setup. I'm away on a tiny bit of a holiday, but you know what, I would still like to record, so sorry for not a professional setup. Also, I would like to give credit to the likes of Milan Franco, as he is the one who suggested this video. If you guys would like me to do any other videos, please do leave suggestions down below, and I will give you credit. But of course, jumping into player number 1 and team number 1, should I say, with Bournemouth and Lucas Moura. Now, of course, hold on a tiny bit. I understand on paper this does sound a tiny bit bizarre, but we've seen weirder signings in the past, and I think Lucas Moura would add so much value to Bournemouth. As we know, he no longer plays at Spurs, and Bournemouth would be able to pick him up on a free, and who wouldn't want a player who can play along the entirety of the front line, especially looking at Bournemouth. I do understand that they did recently sign the likes of Justin Kluivert, who would obviously add a lot of value to their attack, but they do need more goal scorers. I think especially off of last Premier League season, the likes of Billing scoring majority of their goals, Solanke, their main number 9 if you'd like to call them that, only getting 6 goals and 7 assists. They're not awful numbers, but they do need more attacking options. And I do think Moura has been heavily undervalued at Tottenham Hotspurs.
First time.
I mean, despite the fact that he had that amazing run in the Champions League 2-3 years ago, they always seem to want to replace him, whether it be with Kulusevski, where the Gareth Bale comes into the squad, and I do think Moura needs to play for a team like Bournemouth. As I said, he is free, could play anywhere in that front 3 line. Yeah, once again, I can't see why not, to be honest with you. I think he'd add perfect value to this team. Now, jumping into team number 2, it is Aston Villa with Jack Harrison. As we saw, Jack Harrison was obviously brilliant for Leeds United last season, obviously got relegated, and I do think he does deserve to play Premier League football. 5 goals and 7 assists last season, could move for a fee of 15 to 20 million pounds, and considering Aston Villa are going to play European football next season,
Are you serious?
I do think they need to strengthen the depth of their team. I do think you could play in either the role of Philip Coutinho in that attacking midfield position, or complement the play of Leon Bailey as another winger. I mean, if you put Jack Harrison next to Ollie Watkins, once again, I think it would be an absolutely brilliant signing, and I think he has proven that he deserves to play Premier League football. I think he'll do brilliant in Unai Emery's attack. Once again, we've also seen them add the likes of Tillemans to their midfield, so I don't think that's their main priority to kind of improve. Obviously, the likes of Carlos has improved as a centre-back. Obviously, he's back from injury, or should be back from injury. Only playing 3 games last season. Once again, I don't think a centre-back is the main priority, and I do think Harrison would add a lot of value. Now, of course, club number 3 being Arsenal, and I'm sorry this is going to be a tiny bit of a boring one, as it is Declan Rice. Yes, I know it does sound like the boring one, but I've looked at this Arsenal team. I mean, I've looked at their squad, and genuinely it's so hard to improve them. The amount of squad depth and talent throughout this entire Arsenal team, you can really see why they were competing with Man City last season. But if they do want to do it again this season, they need to get Declan Rice. Not purely to improve themselves, but also so that Man City don't get him.
You cannot afford. Great success.
And so that they don't kind of, improve that gap. They want to bridge that gap a bit more. I think them getting the likes of Declan Rice would, as I said, definitely stop that gap between them and Man City. And I do think Declan Rice would add a lot of quality, especially with the likes of Granit Xhaka possibly leaving the club. They do need another very solid defensive player. Yeah, although he would probably go for 100 to 120 million pounds, I do think at the end of the day, if that's what it costs to bridge the gap between them and Man City, then that's what they have to do. I would have suggested another striker, but with Balogun returning from loan and him stating he doesn't want to go out on loan again, once again, Arsenal, it's almost the perfect team. Now, moving on, we've got Brentford, and I've gone for Tarem Mofi, who once again, maybe not a lot of people have heard about, but he had an absolutely brilliant season for Nice in the French league. I think he also played for the likes of Lorient. He scored 18 goals in all competitions, unless I've made a mistake there. Yeah, 18 goals and 3 assists. Once again, he's Victor Osimhen's partner for the Nigerian national team. As a striker, he is brilliant. As we know, Ivan Toney, I bet he couldn't have seen it coming.
Is this some kind of sick joke?
But obviously an 8th man month ban from football. He will be missed, and Brentford do need another striker. And what better than an all-African front three with Mbeumo, Visa, and obviously Mofi up front for Brentford. But as a striker, once again, if you want someone with pace who can really help the build-up play, who's really going to contribute to the players around him like Ivan Toney did, I do think Tyrone Mofi is your man. Once again, he's one of those very complete footballers. He is very physical, he is very fast, and as I said, I almost view him as a budget Victor Osimhen, if I can say that. And if Brentford can get him, I don't think they'll have that many problems without Ivan Toney. And once Ivan Toney returns, you could almost play them up front together. Now, next up, we've got Brighton, and once again, it's going to be an interesting one, as I've gone for Ndaya, who's just been promoted with Sheffield United. Looking at Brighton, although there are some areas of the pitch they could improve, obviously, especially playing European football next season, they do need squad depth, but they so desperately need another midfielder. As we know, Caicedo could be out the door, they lost McAllister to Liverpool, and looking at Ndaya, his numbers for Sheffield United last season were absolutely phenomenal. 14 goals and 10 assists. As I said, if you want to play European football, if they want to spend 15 to 20 million pounds on him, I think he would improve the squad so much. He is a Senegalese international player on a very regular basis, and once again, with that kind of quality, who can say no?
No.
Now, next up, we've got the likes of Burnley, and I've gone for a striker option for them with Joel Perreault. Once again, sorry for any pronunciation errors here, but as we know, Burnley were phenomenal in the Championship last season. I believe they had the best defense in the league, which once again, that doesn't always translate to the Premier League, but I do think if I had to improve one position for them, it would be their striker.
It's like the LeBron James of soccer.
I think Tello did really well in terms of their attacking opportunities, but in terms of a number 9, looking at Perreault, looking at him as a Dutch striker, he's been absolutely brilliant for the likes of Swansea this season. He's 6'1", as we know, extremely physical, scored 17 or 19 goals last season, 17 of them coming from in the box, showing that he really is a poacher kind of striker, which, as we know, when that comes to Burnley, what other kind of player do you need in terms of a striker? I do think Burnley could be very impressive next season, but they do need a number 9. Next up is a tiny bit of a strange club with Chelsea, and I've gone for Wilfred Ndidi. Look, I know he didn't have a brilliant season with Leicester last season, but I think that's purely the fact that Leicester underperformed as a whole. But if you look at Chelsea, they desperately need another midfielder. I mean, they've gotten rid of the likes of Mason Mount, Kovacic, and N'Golo Kante, and Havertz from that midfielders transfer window.
Come on!
And I think getting in the likes of Ndidi, who's had a massive kind of value drop over the last year, going from around 45 million to about 20 million pounds. And if you can pick up a player like Ndidi for 20 million pounds, I think that's perfect for Chelsea. As we know, they've gotten the likes of Nkunku, also the likes of Lukaku will be returning from loan. They've gotten the likes of Jackson as a striker. I think on the attacking front, they should be sorted. Defensively, yes, there definitely are some players they can bring in, maybe another goalkeeper as well. But I think at the main moment, they need another midfielder. And looking at the likes of Ndidi, still only 26 years old, as we know, as a physical player, can be so vital, and defensively on his day can be one of the best in the league. Now, next up, we've got Crystal Palace, and I mean, Akpom just seems to be the perfect option. He has been linked to them in real life, obviously the Championship Player of the Season last season. I think he got something stupid like 28 goals in 40 games. Once again, Crystal Palace desperately need another striker, especially since Wilfried Zaha's contract officially expired. Once again, we all knew the day would come, but it is sad that it finally came here. But obviously, looking at Akpom, I do believe he is the correct replacement. He has been linked to them in real life. £15 million for a striker who could totally revolutionize that attack. I do think Crystal Palace need to go for it. If you've got him ahead of the likes of Eze, next to the likes of Elise, I do think once again Crystal Palace absolutely sorted. Although yes, they could use 1 or 2 more players in defense, maybe another right back as well. I think Akpom is the right direction. Now, talking about the right direction, next up we've got Everton with Rodrigo. Once again, another player they're linked to in real life, and Everton once again seriously struggling over the last 2 years, and they'll really be hoping not to be in a relegation battle next season. I mean, with the amount of money they've spent, they really can't afford it anymore, and I think Rodrigo is the right option. He has been linked to Real Madrid for only £3.5 million, and if Everton can pay that amount of money for him, I think go for it. I mean, I think he scored 13 goals in the Premier League last season, which I know doesn't sound fantastic, but he was doing really well under Jesse Marsch. Marsh until he got sacked. Once again, still don't agree with the sacking of Jesse Marsh. I didn't think he was doing bad, especially right after the transfer window. And I think if you look at Rodrigo in the right system, would do wonders. As we know, Calvert-Lewin as a striker has missed 30 games in total over the last 2 seasons combined. So if you get the likes of Rodrigo, I think he'll be a lot more reliable. Now, talking about reliable, next up we've got Sinisterra to Fulham. Once again, kind of a like-for-like replacement for the likes of Willian, whose contract has expired at Fulham. And as we know, was absolutely brilliant for Fulham last season, getting 5 goals in 19 games. Doesn't sound that prolific, but if you put him in a team next to the likes of Mitrovic, ahead of the likes of Andres Pereira, I do think Sinisterra is absolutely going to shine. As we know, in the previous years, he's done well when he's played in Europe. He did well when he played for Feyenoord. I do think this is a player who's got a lot of talent and could almost fight for a mid-table team, which, looking at Fulham, that is kind of the area they're fighting for at the moment. I do think he is a very complete player. Technically, he's very good, very fast, and would be perfect for Fulham. Now, next up, we've got the likes of Liverpool. A very interesting one, as I've gone for Denzel Dumfries. As you know, he'll be able to join up with Dutch teammates, with Virgil van Dijk and Gakpo as well. But looking at Liverpool, you do have to ask yourselves, where is the main priority for them to fix? Previously, it would have been in the midfield, but they recently got the likes of Szoboszlai and McAllister. I do think they do need another defensive midfield option as well, but I do think the main priority would be a right back. Obviously, with Trent showing for England how brilliant he can be in the midfield, and he would be able to work well with Dumfries if they both worked on the right-hand side.
That's why he's the GOAT!
Looking at Dumfries over the last few years, he got 4 assists in the Serie A last season, 4 the season before as well. But once again, he doesn't have to be the main creator if he's got Trent right ahead of him. Good sign for Liverpool for about £25 million, which they do have that money now that they're not spending over £100 million on Jude Bellingham. I think he'll be the perfect signing for him. Now, next up, we've got the likes of Luton. Now, once again, this is one of the hardest teams to kind of show. I do think they are the weakest team in the Premier League this season, if you look player for player. Saying that though, I do think they have a brilliant squad, but I would re-sign Nakamba. As we know, Marvellous did absolutely marvellously in the Championship last season, and he was one of their standout players. And looking at him obviously returning from loan, I don't see him getting game time at Aston Villa, and I don't really see him being the kind of player who could play European football. Maybe one day. But in the meantime, I do think he needs to be that solid defensive wall in the midfield for Luton. Once again, it's going to be hard for them to make some really top quality signings, but I do think if they can influence the likes of Nakamba to go back, it would be perfect. Now, next up, we've got Manchester City. Now, of course, the big question is, how do you improve a team that just won the treble, that is considered to be the best club in the world? And I've gone for Frenkie De Jong. To me, this is almost the most perfect signing in this video. As we know, they just lost the likes of Ilkay Gundogan to Barcelona, so why not kind of make a swap and get the likes of Frenkie De Jong in? I mean, I think player like for like is very, very similar to Gundogan. As we know, both very technically good and won't either be your top goal scorer, but will contribute heavily to your team, will score important goals, and defensively absolute workhorses. I do think the work rate of De Jong would be perfect for Man City, because let's be honest, they do need a Gundogan replacement, and De Jong would be absolutely perfect. And looking at Man City, I mean, they've got the money for it.
I'm rich. Hey.
I say go for it. Now, of course, my team Manchester United is next, and I've gone for Andre Onana. Look, I would love to put an exciting transfer suggestion here, either in attack, in the midfield, in defense, anywhere, but kind of by default, us getting rid of David De Gea and not replacing him at the time of recording.
You idiot. You're honestly an idiot.
It just, by default, has to be a goalkeeper. And looking at Andre Onana, last season breaking the record for most clean sheets in a Champions League season, as you know, absolutely brilliant with his feet, which not a lot of goalkeepers are, and I think he will fit Man United's system absolutely perfectly and could be one of our best goalkeepers, dare I say, ever, with how good he is. I think Andre Onana, if we can spend 50 to 60 million on him and really sort out that position for years to come, once again, it is the best option. Now, next up, going from one Champions League team to another, we've got Kyle Walker-Peters, which, I mean, if you've watched my channel before, you know how highly I rate Kyle Walker-Peters. I do think going to Newcastle United would be the best option for him. I don't think he'll necessarily start over Kieran Trippier, but obviously playing Champions League football, they do need to improve their squad depth. And looking at Kyle Walker-Peters in terms of his progressive passes and carries per 90 minutes, he is very, very good. And I think at 26 years old, he could learn a lot under Kieran Trippier, and he can also play as a left-back side so that Dan Burn doesn't have to be a left-back in the Champions League. I mean, I just just don't want to see Dan Burn running down that left back side against the likes of prime Barcelona. No! It just isn't going to work. But look at Kyle Walker-Peters. He can add that depth to Newcastle United and could eventually replace the likes of Kieran Trippier. Now, next up, talking about replacements, we've got Nottingham Forest, and a goalkeeper replacement is necessary. And I've gone for the likes of Justin Bilio.
Who?
Obviously, as we know, Bildo has done relatively well with Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, but looking at him, once again, Nottingham Forest getting rid of both Dean Henderson and Keylor Navas, both returning from loan, and unless the likes of Forest can get Dean Henderson back on loan or back on a permanent deal from last year, I do think Bilio is the perfect option. As you know, in the Eredivisie and for the Netherlands national team, he has really improved himself. Has a worth of around £20 million, only 25 years old, 12 clean sheets in 25 games across all competitions last season, only 19 goals conceded, with an expected of 23 conceded last season. The fact that he got 4 lower than that really shows as a top goalkeeper how important he can be. 60 saves across all competitions last season. I do think as a goalkeeper he would be sorted, and it is the priority option for them. I used to think it was a striker, but Awoni really did improve towards the end of last season, so I do think a goalkeeper is necessary. Now, next up, we've got Sheffield United, and I've gone for Habib Diallo. Looking at him for Strasbourg this season, been absolutely monstrous and was one of the top goal scorers. I mean, for Sheffield United, got 20 goals in 37 games, has only a fee of around £15 million, and once again, as a striker, is absolutely brilliant. Had 4 expected assists last season, but didn't quite reach that number. And if you put him next to a player or around a player like Ndayu, I do think he is going to be a top quality option. I think as a striker, he does deserve to play Premier League football. And once again, without Billy Sharp in that squad and looking at Ollie McBurney, I do think a number 9 is going to be the top option because, I mean, let's be honest, Brewster isn't going to do it this time, is he? Now, next up, we do have Tottenham Hotspurs, and I've gone for a centre-back. Once again, sorry about pronunciation, but it is Tosin Adarabioyo.
Who?
Adarabioyo, I'm so sorry. But obviously the Fulham centre-back, absolutely brilliant last season. As we know, a very physical player, 6'5", defensively will put in the work rate and is incredibly fast as well. I mean, I'm just so tired over the last few years of just seeing Christian Romero being paired up with Eric Dyer. I do think it is time for Spurs, if they do want to play European football again, that they do get a quality centre-back partnership, especially under the likes of Ang Postecoglou. I do think they do need another solid centre-back, and I think in terms of affordable options for maybe 10 to 15 million pounds, I do think the likes of Adarabioyo is going to be your best option. Now, looking at our second last player, it is going to be West Ham United, and of course with the Declan Rice replacement, I've gone for Sangara. Obviously, looking at Ibrahim Sangara, I would almost compare him as the perfect Declan Rice replacement.
Don't give me hope.
Look at him in terms of goal contributions. I mean, only 25 years old, getting 5 goals and 1 assist in the Eredivisie last season, 3 of those being headers, so you know he's a physical player. Incredibly fast as well, got 25 chances created as a defensive midfielder. 84% passing accuracy. If you look at his FB ref statistics, one of the best defensive midfielders in world football. I actually think if he was English, he would be worth £100 million. Once again, looking at the likes of Sangara, only 25 years old, I think if West Ham United could get him, I think he could almost be better than Declan Rice. I think he could be the next Yaya Toure, to be honest with you. Now, next up, looking at our final team and our final player, it is Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I'm sorry, this might be an underwhelming one, but I've gone for the likes of Alex Scott. As we know, Wolves have recently lost the likes of Ruben Neves, one of their best players, maybe ever in the team's history, to the Saudi League, and once again, they do need another midfielder. Once again, I could go throughout this entire Wolverhampton Wanderers team because they do need replacements absolutely everywhere. But I'm kind of going to go for a slow rebuild with them. Looking at Alex Scott, been brilliant in the Under-20 World Cup with England. Looking at him in the Championship with Bristol last season, really did show promising moments. Although his goals and assists don't look absolutely spectacular, he's a brilliant passer of the ball in terms of interceptions and clearances. He always helps out and does have a very high work rate in both defensive and attacking areas. Once again, not the most exciting signing out there, but I do think if Wolves are in threat of relegation next season, which I genuinely think they are with the kind of players that they've lost, I do think Alex Scott is a good start for a rebuild. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's video, where I mention one sensible signing for all 20 Premier League clubs. As I said, if you guys have any other suggestions for videos, let me know down below, and let me know if you have any suggestions on players I've missed out, if you would have gone for someone else. But of course guys, this has been Finn, FYNN. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers. Bye.